Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of season 2, where we're talking all about breakups. And today's episode is a really special one because this is one where we've actually gotten some ideas and thoughts and feedback from our listeners. We actually put out there into the universe and said, tell us your do's and don'ts for breakups. So we got all sorts of things. Some of them we've talked about already on our previous episodes, and some things are brand new. So Tracy and I are going to get a chance to hear from our listeners via their direct messages to us. We're going to read those to you, and we're going to make some commentary and see what you all think. Interestingly, though, just to point out, we had a lot of feedback that almost was in opposition, where one person might suggest one thing, another person, as a do, and another person suggests it as a don't. So that'll be very interesting. And as a listener, we want you to take what works and leave what doesn't, as always. So, Tracy,
but only do nice stuff.
Only do nice stuff. Yes. Yeah. I deleted the ones I didn't like already. No, I'm just kidding.
Not you. I'm saying the people. Take what you say, take what you like and take and get rid of what you don't. But if you like something that's mean, get rid of that too.
Yeah. Well, and I'd like to give credit to our listeners. Actually, they didn't put any real mean stuff in here. All the stuff in here, I thought was productive and healthy. So we'll see what your take is on some of this too, Tracy. And as a surprise element, because after having known Tracy and worked with her for a while, I know that she likes the element of surprise. So she hasn't actually seen these comments. And so, as the practical partner, I have had an opportunity to organize them and collate them and tag them and synthesize them in themes. And Tracy has not looked at them at all. And that is very purposeful to maximize our strengths in this conversation. So we're going to look at kind of three things. One is we've been given some advice, do's and don'ts for the breaker-upper. We've also been given do's and don'ts for the broken up with. And then we've been given just some general do's and don'ts, which is regardless of what your role was in the breakup, here are some things that might help you get through it. So let's start with the breaker-upper. All right. So there's a couple things that came from the breaker-upper. So Tracy, I'm going to run them by you and get your take on these. So this was really interesting. This was a theme that came up with two different listeners, and it was, don't wait for it to get really bad to break up. So one listener said, don't wait to break up until it's unbearable. Breaking up before that point makes it a lot easier to be friends, or at least have a less painful healing process, in my experience. And the second person said, don't try to force a relationship to work. But a lot of people tend to do that. So what's your take on that? You're the breaker-upper. Don't wait for it to get really bad to break up. What do you say?
Can you see my face? I say what does that mean, really bad? I think that's very subjective. Like, I don't know. I mean, you've got to give it a try. Like, I feel like that's the kind of person that leaves before they've tried everything. I mean, there's a reason people come together, and I'm not talking about like some kind of lame relationship that was just, a fly by night thing. I mean, if it's a real relationship, I think you have to put that effort in, even in this period of you want to get out. Well, maybe look at yourself. Maybe think of the reasons you want to get out. Have you done this before? Is this a pattern? You know what I mean? Like, it's so subjective.
Okay. So really bad in your case means that there might be something to work on to make it really good again, whether that's looking at yourself or working on the relationship.
Yeah. Because you clearly liked each other at some point, right? So I'd say try. What do you think of that? You probably think that's a good rule.
I do think it's a good rule. I think hanging on too long sometimes can make the breakup horrid, and in the relationship horrid. I talked earlier in season 1 about watering the garden, and, I stopped watering the garden in one relationship and the plants died, and I sat there with a dead garden for years, and it was, it didn't serve either of us. And so we probably should.
But why do you think that was? Why do you think, like, because fear of leaving, or, I think this could be its own whole podcast probably, but like just that question alone, is it like a fear of leaving, or is it because you you were still invested in some way, you know?
Well, I mean, there's two parts to it. One is the logistical part, right? Is trying to separate out all your stuff and figure out what life after this breakup looks like. And sometimes it's just easier to stay, which is what I tend to do. But the other part of it is hope that it gets better. Or I've also had it where I'm afraid to break up because I'm afraid that I will have made a mistake. And then I'll be like, oh my gosh, I really miss this person. I really made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. And then I kind of got myself into hot water. So I stay really a long time, to hopefully improve the relationship, with the best intentions.
Well, okay. So if you're just sitting in the dark, dead garden and you're not doing anything, that's one thing. But if you're sitting there scratching, water, trying to revive your plants, that's different. Because
yes, but
I'm the person who will scratch and I don't
even
know.
What does it mean to even scratch a plant? But regardless.
It means you scratch the dirt around the edge. Like
why would you scratch dirt around a plant?
Because you're like opening it up. You're like putting some nutrients in there. You're putting some water in there. You're like loosening the soil, because you're still invested. If I'm invested, I'm staying because I feel like there's a way to fix it.
Okay. Good. Well, and this is interesting, right? We have two different takes on this. And I feel like I can be invested and sometimes be overly invested in something that just isn't going to work or serve. All right. Let's look at the second one here on the breaker upper one. Okay. Be honest. This is a good one too. We haven't really totally talked a ton about this. Be honest. So this person says, when breaking up with someone, don't tell them the cliche of it's not you, it's me. People see right through that and don't respect it. And then second person says, candor equals kindness. Be honest with people. So what do you think? You're breaking up with someone. How honest are you about why you're breaking up?
100% agree. I'm probably one of the most honest people that you'll meet. I mean, it annoys people sometimes. I have a hard time
what if it
keeping that honesty out.
What if it was something that would really hurt the other person by being honest with them, you would end up hurting them? Would you still be honest?
Well, I've never experienced that, so I can't speak to that I still think you need to be honest. Like, what they decide they're never going to shave again and that's upsetting, or is it something more serious? Like, what would it be? Because you're already dating them, so you must have liked them in the first place. You know what I mean? Did they develop some kind of terrible condition that you can't handle?
Or a habit, or they watched a TV show you couldn't stand.
Then you go for a walk and you do something else. Right.
So do you tell someone the details though of like, I have grown to be not attracted to you anymore, and I don't, want to engage in any kind of physical intimacy with you anymore. And I don't really like it when you reach out and try to hold my hand. Like, do you get that specific with someone, or you just say, listen, my attraction has waned? Or like when I say honest, I'm not saying that the alternative is to lie, but I guess the question is, to what level of disclosure would you have in a breakup?
You're saying to what level of specificity, but I would be very clear. I think you need to get it all out there, because if you're really going to break up with somebody over something, then you got to get it out. You need to say it,
Right. Okay.
And you have to discuss it, right? I think you really need to discuss it. If it's something like they got some hideous tattoo you didn't like, but it meant something to them, maybe you could actually learn something from that conversation, I mean, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but to actually just go through it and talk about it. I mean, my breakups that I've initiated, there's been so much processing. Every little thing has come out, and I've never tired of someone. You know what I mean? I've never been like that. And I even have some issues like misophonia, where certain sounds drive me crazy, like people eating and stuff. So I have to like maybe eat, not be around them while they're eating or something. But I think you need to have all that information out on the table. In my opinion, everything, everywhere should be out on the table.
Okay.
Whether it's hurtful or not. But I've never felt that. I've never I've never tired of someone. I've had like too much drama, too much like toxicity, that kind of stuff. But that's because it's all out there because we're talking about it, you know?
Right,
I
right.
think the
Okay.
more honest you are, the better the end your life is going to be because there's nothing left unsaid, you know? And you don't start dating someone unless you actually like them. So I would find it hard to believe that I suddenly wouldn't like something about someone. I mean, yes, there's things that would get on my nerves,
Hmm.
but that
Okay.
becomes like clear, you know what I mean? Especially when you're with someone for years
Right,
and you
right.
find ways to mitigate that because maybe it's only your deal, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's what with you, with honesty, that's, you can own it too and say, this is my experience, right? It doesn't have to be like
Yeah.
you are unattractive. It could be more like, listen, my attraction for you has, faded or something to that effect. I've never said anything like that to anyone. And really that the breakups that I've had, or well, I haven't had too many where I've been the breaker upper, but or even when I've been broken up with, it hasn't been that much honesty. Well, I don't know if it's honesty, it's specificity. I would say it's like, we're just not syncing and I don't even know how to put this in words, or I just don't feel the connection anymore. And I can't put it into words what that even means. It just means that it's
Yeah.
lacking and I don't want it. So it's honest, but it's not very specific.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I know you to be a very honest person as well. And I think that you would say, I think when it's honest, it's like not making up some BS. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah, you can say, I just don't know. This isn't working or whatever, or we fight too much or I don't know how to fix it. But yeah, I mean, I think those are legit things. You don't have to be extremely specific, but I don't see you as being dishonest. I don't see me as
No,
being dishonest either. And
no. And I
why do
wouldn't
you want to
suggest
live
that,
that
right?
way?
Yeah. I wouldn't
Yeah.
suggest that being dishonest and lying to someone about why you're breaking up with them. But at the same time,
Well,
you can decide what your level of specificity is. You might not even know what it is. Like you could say there's a lack of connection, but not exactly know where it came from or why it is. And that's okay too.
well, right. And I think we also sort of have to distinguish, like, my best friend is straight, a straight woman. She dates men. So it's very different because these men have said certain things to her. And then she's seen them online, dating like a month, trying to date a month or two later after, giving kind of a BS line. And I think that's different. It's not true for everybody. This is very general, but lesbians, I think, tend to process. And for me, like I said, it's ingrained in me. I need it. And so I
Yeah.
can't imagine dating someone, where I would be the one to like, not really tell them what was going on. Now it's happened to me by a woman, and that's devastating to me because I don't really even understand what happened,
Right.
So
Right.
I think
Well,
like give the person the courtesy to
yeah. And
know
there's
what's
that
going on.
that same phrase, right? Like, I'm not ready to date. I've heard that one before from people. I'm not ready to date. And then you're right. They're back out there like a week later dating someone else. And you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
That's just a kind of a cop out. All right. Let's
Right.
switch gears here because you already transitioned us a little bit to it is for the broken up with. We had two themes that came up in this one. The first one was, and I already know what you're going to say on this one and where you and I are going to land. It's don't pry for processing. So here are the two comments. One listener said, listen to the words. If they said it's over and don't contact me, don't contact them. Really don't. The second one is don't ask why if they didn't tell you why. What does it matter? Even if they told you why, would you change yourself for the next person who may not even have an issue with it? So don't pry for processing. What is your take, Tracy?
Don't pry for processing.
Don't make the other person process just because you do, even if they don't want to.
Well, I mean, you can't, like, if they're not willing to, but I would certainly beg them to before, I'm not saying after they've left and now I'm not saying be a stalker. I'm saying during the breakup process, yeah, I want to know. You better let me know. And if you don't, well, that's only happened to me once, this most recent one, which I'm so traumatized and devastated about because I did not understand why, and that person couldn't articulate it. And that's, to me, I still want to know, but it's not like I'm stalking her. It's not like I ever contacted her. You know what I mean? Like, It's on her. That person, they need to figure out what's they're comfortable with. And like I said, if I ever saw an avoidant person again, I'd run the other way because
Avoid
I
the
want to know.
avoidant. Just the
Yeah,
irony behind
because
that.
I know. Well, it's self-protection, but that's the thing is like, I want to process, but am I going to be a stalker? No. Am I going to keep contacting that person? No, not going to happen because I do have self-respect. I'll just talk about it with you over and over. And then I'll
And
say,
over and
stop
over.
speculating, Tracy. You're just speculating. It leads to no good.
So,
And then
but
I'll
let me go
move
back to
on to
this.
something
Let
else.
me go back to the one line though that I think is really interesting. What does it matter? If the person doesn't want to be with you, does it matter why?
Well, that's a whole book, an episode, and lifetime of self-exploration. I mean, I can go back and forth on that in an hour, in a day, like back and forth. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't care. It doesn't matter what they think. And then, oh my gosh, it does matter. Maybe I could do this better. Or I could be this better. Maybe I should change my hair. Or maybe I should get more muscular. Or maybe I should be this, right? That's no way to live. But I think most people fluctuate, will go back and forth, I do.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's fluctuating, but right. Like, I'm totally fine. I'm perfect. I'm great. And then I'm like, no, obviously I'm not because this person didn't want me.
So I had a relationship once where I was told by somebody that I was with that my biggest weakness was how passionate and excited I get for things. It can be very overwhelming to people and it's just hard to keep up with. And she said that was just a drawback. And that was part of the many things that contributed to the death of this relationship. Then I dated someone right after who said, one of my favorite things about you is your passion and your lust for life. And so does it matter? Did I need to take that feedback to heart from the first person? Should I change myself?
Did you take it to heart?
No, I looked at her in the middle of this counseling session and I said, that is my favorite thing about myself and I am not changing it. But I thought it was interesting, the perspectives of like, that was part of something about why we couldn't be together, but why it flourished so well in another relationship. So I don't know. Does it matter? I mean, maybe I guess the key for me would be whether or not the why has to do with something self-improvement wise. Like if it's just a difference in kind of characteristics or perceptions, that's one thing. But if I'm doing something that's really harmful to a relationship, I would want to know what that was so that I didn't do it again in the future.
Right, because that was an intrinsic characteristic of yourself, right? That you're just like a squirrel on crack and you get a lot of work done. You're like, I've never seen anything like it in my life. You get a lot of stuff done and it is overwhelming and it makes, the person who lies down on the couch in the evening feel bad because they know you're home doing like 1,000 things. But that's something that's you, right? So if a person doesn't value that, then bye. Like, you know what I mean? But if they said, hey, you're being rude, you're like constantly rude to me or you're undermining me. And you'd be like, oh my God, I didn't realize it. It comes from my childhood. It comes from these, patterns that I developed or whatever. That's different, right? Like your behavior towards somebody else is different than who you are as a person. And I dealt with that a lot. And I had to do a lot of therapy afterwards that, the kind of life that I want to live, which is a free life of hiking, snowboarding, working whatever job I want to work to support that lifestyle, I was told was immature and, irresponsible. And I never wanted to have children. And so therefore I was not grown up enough. I didn't want to be a grown up. And like when I met the person who told me all that, I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it. But then after many years, right, that kind of started to sink in. So when we split up, I had to do a lot of therapy around that and get that person's voice out of my head because you know what? I want to live the life of fun. I want to. And who is here to tell me I can't? And the stuff that I do that is for fun doesn't hurt a single person. So, the stuff that I did during a relationship of I'm out of here and slamming the door and I can't be with you anymore. That's undermining. That should change. I've changed that, that I've grown and I've changed through therapy. But to be the person who wants to live a life that they actually enjoy, well, sorry, that shouldn't change.
Well, and that goes back to like season 1 when we talked about the differences between like behavior and personality, right? And like when do you change somebody? Like if it's part of who they are in the essence, well, no, absolutely not. That's part of who they are. But if it's an unproductive behavior, like being rude or being late or those kinds of things, then absolutely. All right. I'm going to move us on to the next one. This is the last one under the being broken up with. This came up for 4 people, and it actually came up in the general do's and don'ts too. So it was a quite popular one. Let it go. So one person said, don't live in it. You must wake up each morning and move forward. Don't beat yourself up, right? So don't look back really and think about all the things you did horribly. Cry, scream, vent, get it out, look forward and not back. So they all have a theme of just kind of getting through it and moving forward. What's your take on that? And we've talked a lot about that in this season, but do you have any other kernels of wisdom on this?
No. Did my best friend send you those? Because that's what she says to me all the time. Get over it. Move on. Get on with your life. And I say, I'm not ready. Like I'm still licking my wounds. And I feel like, no. I mean, people have to feel what they need to feel. It's not, I don't believe in wallowing, but I also don't believe in like cutting off the feelings, just letting it go. Like we talked about that before in several of these episodes, probably. Like my old me would have jumped in with somebody else immediately, right? To either prove a point or look at me, I'm so attractive, or look at me, I can get a girlfriend, or look at me, I'm over you, when I wasn't. And I'm not now, I'm not going to do that anymore. So, don't agree. Buzzer. No, out. Not agree.
Right. Here's where we diverge, right? I think, I do think generally let it go. I would never say cut off the healing process before it's done. Or force the letting it go. But I think trying to engage in behaviors that move you towards letting it go can be helpful. Like, as I mentioned before in previous episodes, the law of attraction really helped me. As I changed my attitude and my outlook on life, I started attracting more people and more opportunities that felt more optimistic and more productive. And it allowed me to let go of some of the negativity that in a breakup that I had. And that helped me let it go. Like, you can't just be like, one day I'm going to get up today, I'm going to let it go. I don't put it on my to-do list and check it off. It's really hard to do, but I engaged in things that helped me let it go. And so I like to consciously be moving forward through that let it go process, but being in tune with my body and my heart, and my mind as to what it needs. And sometimes that process slows down and sometimes it speeds up, but I always feel like I'm moving forward.
Well, that's interesting. I feel like I've not always moved forward, but I've not moved backwards, and I've kind of learned to live alongside that sadness, like to have it with me no matter what I'm doing. So I can really be enjoying a trip. I can enjoy, the pickleball. I can enjoy not work. Okay. I don't enjoy work. Let's be honest about that. Being a lawyer is boring. But I can enjoy my life while still being sad about something.
Okay. So
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
you can compartmentalize more than I can. I have a really hard time doing that. I've been trying, but it's really hard. Like sometimes this stuff just seeps into each other's space.
Yes. You're very intense. I mean, I'm very intense also. So that's interesting, but you can tell I've moved forward a bit, but then it's like a lot of that stuff's still there. The feelings haven't gone away. Right. But as several people have mentioned, like my life, I'm moving on, doing a podcast. I got a better job. I'm, doing all these things so that my life looks from the outside great, fantastic. Yeah. But inside there's still a slice of me, or there's a part of me or part of my heart that's still really sad. But I guess learning to live with that is what I needed to do,
Right. Yeah. So interesting. And for me, I don't.
Is that letting it go or not letting it go?
No, I mean, that's moving alongside. It's like having a simultaneous process of moving forward with your life, but not moving forward with your feelings.
It's like carrying a creepy baby doll around with you all the time that you can't let go.
What in the world kind of analogy is that? That is really, I'm overwhelmed with
it's like
a creepy baby doll.
Yeah. It's like having a little thing that you just can't really set down, but it's like hideous to you, but you've got to carry it with you.
Okay.
Yeah. A creepy baby doll.
I've never carried the creepy baby doll, but okay. Aside from creepy baby dolls and carrying those, let's move on to some general, do's and don'ts. about going through a breakup, regardless if you're the breaker-upper or the broken up with. So you're going to love this one. I know your take on this, but I want to know any other insights. I'm going to read you a few listener comments. We had processing and therapy. This person says, I'm a huge believer in energy healing and therapy. Your friends are great to talk to, but they are not therapists. And likely there are some benefits to talking with a professional about the emotions and how to move through everything in a way that is healing rather than causes more bitterness and mistrust. This other person just said, go see a licensed therapist. And then the last one said, 6 months after we broke up, she wanted to meet and talk. We had cooled off by then. She said, we brought out the worst in each other. We are both really good people, but we just don't work well in a relationship. I wish you well and know you will do amazing in life. I said, I feel the same way and wish you all the best as well. That conversation gave me a lot of closure, and I naturally want the best for her. It's not forced. I was able to let go of all the negative energy and fighting at the end of the relationship, and I still remember it and never want back into it, but I also wish her very well. So there's two kind of things in here. One is this idea of kind of formalized therapy where you can talk through your emotions. And the other one is actually finding that closure and that sense of processing, but waiting and giving it some time to go back and talk to your ex and kind of put a little, bow and ribbon on that experience and move forward. So what are your thoughts on processing and therapy?
Agree. I love therapy. I think it's great. And it's always helpful unless, the therapist isn't any good. But, like you had a breakup coach. That was great. I think that's really good. Any kind of coaching or therapy is going to be helpful, I think. And as far as the closure with the person, well, I guess it just depends on how you're feeling if they approach you. I mean, I think you have to honor your own feelings about that too. Whether you want to give that person, maybe you don't want to anymore. Maybe it's not really worth it to you and you don't have to, you know what I mean? Like you don't need to do that to have closure. You may have moved, gotten that on your own. But if you're like in a good space and you're like, sure, let's talk. Maybe that'll really help, I went out with someone years after I'd been like really broken up about her, sad about her. And I was like, oh, what was my problem? Why did I hang on to that sadness for so long? Like, I don't even really think we have that much in common, So it can be helpful, I think, in both of those regards, but you have to honor where you are and how you're feeling.
Right. Yeah. And I would agree with you, particularly on the therapy, like you had mentioned, and I talked about in a previous season was, I had a breakup coach once, and that was really helpful because I was asked very different kinds of questions than my therapist asked, to really process through, because for me, most of my breakups have been an individual journey where I have experienced the breakup and I haven't had the other person to talk to process through it. I haven't sought that out. They haven't sought me out for whatever reason. So I've had to do an individual journey on dealing with the breakup. So a lot of that closure had to come from within. And in order to do that, I needed to process. So I did, with processing with, formal therapists and so forth. And so I've never done the thing.
And with people like me.
And like with friends
who are willing to actually go deep and talk about things,
and ask me the right questions.
Right.
Yeah. And absolutely. So I found
you have quite a few friends like that.
I do. And I've been really lucky to be able to have such, process-oriented experiences that allow me to have my own sense of closure without going and necessarily processing with the person that I've ended up getting out of a relationship with. As a matter of fact, I don't even recall that I've even really had any formal processing with anyone that I've ever been in a relationship after it ended. So it may very well be useful. I could find that all of a sudden it opens up floodgates of feelings I didn't know that I still had that were unresolved. But as of now, I've never tried it. So
interesting. I've done so much processing, and I've processed with exes years later, whatever. But I told you, like, I like to keep those people in my life unless there's something really bad. And that's only been one time out of all of them. So to me, I like it. I find it helpful.
Well, good. And see, again, that's one of those things I've never tried. So maybe, but here's one that I really resonate with. And you mentioned it earlier, is feel it all. Okay. So 4 listeners talked about this. Feel the feelings and then redirect them to something that gives you purpose and joy. Another one said, feel all the emotions. Another one said, allow yourself to feel whatever you feel in the moments that you feel these things. And the last one said, don't run from emotions or isolate. So all these 4 listeners are saying, just feel it. And I love the phrase, feel it until it's all been felt. Feel it until it's all been felt.
Agree.
I totally 100% agree. If you start, hijacking your emotions and, I shouldn't be so sad for so long, or this shouldn't make me upset, or I should be further along in the healing process than I am. You're not letting yourself just feel. Just feel. Just feel until it's all been felt.
Yeah. And, we've been there for each other, right? Do you remember crying in your driveway and saying, when am I going to stop feeling this way? And I'm like, I don't know. Does it matter? Like, just keep feeling it. And you've been there for me at the same time where I cry and cry and cry. And you're like, you're not a jerk about it, and you're like, you got to work through it. You have to feel your feelings,
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the point where you don't cry anymore. You're so sad, but you're not crying. It's interesting. Like, you go through that, initially there's shock, and then there's just, if you've been broken up with, and especially if it's not something you wanted, like, then sadness, and it's like a physical pain. And then that pain eventually goes away, but there's still the sadness there. And it's like, if you just let it go, like, my friend kept trying to get me to like minimize the relationship or, things. And I'm like, that's not helping. Just letting me be and talk about it will make me move through these stages faster,
Yeah, absolutely. And it is hard when other people intervene and tell you how you should be feeling or what you could be feeling, or if you've been feeling this way too long or whatever. But I like this particular, the first suggestion, which was, feel the feelings and then redirect them to something that gives you purpose and joy. So that's where you talk about like this idea of wallowing, not wallowing, but then saying, like, dry your eyes a little bit and get up and move forward. And I know it's not the same thing, but, I haven't, really talked much about it, but my mother recently passed away, in the last about month and a half. And that was a really tragic and heartbreaking experience for me. And I'm still feeling it. And I'm going to be feeling all the feelings for a really, really long time. But I also know that she doesn't want me to sit and cry all the time, and that she wants, she would want me to find purpose and joy. So sometimes I'll cry for 20, 30 minutes, and I'll just hard cry, the sobbing cry. And then I'll dry my eyes and I'll go for a walk or go do something that I really enjoy or call a friend, because we can't just sit in that space of heartbreak. And heartbreak comes in all fashions, not just being broken up with, but in losing anything that's important to us. And so it's very similar in that sense. And so finding a sense of purpose and joy in the midst of heartbreak is also really important.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. It's like that doll is always with you, right? You're never going to forget your mom. You're not going to forget her. You're always going to be sad that she's not here, but you can't let your life, be devoid of joy either. So here you are out doing fun things, and you got the doll with you. Okay, maybe it's in a backpack and you're not looking at it, but it's
not
like
a creepy doll. But yes.
It is creepy. It's a sad doll. How about a sad
doll? Okay, how about a sad doll?
It's a sad doll that goes with you. It's sadness. Do you remember that movie Inside Out? Did you ever see that, Pixar?
I did not.
Oh my God, it's one of my absolute favorite movies. I recommend it to everybody that I talk to. It's incredibly beautiful. And in the person's mind there's sadness, there's joy, there's anger, there's disgust, there's all of these things that we need to have. And like, sadness wants to go away at some point. And the other characters realize, no, sadness can't go away, because sadness also helps us, right? It helps us to process. And you can't just be always happy, and you can't always be sad either,
Right.
Well, gotta have some of both, and sad things are going to happen to us.
And I think that ties into some of our other listeners. We won't even need to probably go into great depth about this, but some of them talked about this idea of mourn and move on, which is kind of similar, which is, one listener said, mourn it and give it time and space, then move on. One person said, and this is, an interesting take, is people come into our lives to teach us life lessons as long as you need them to. And they stretch you. And then one day they're gone, and you let go, and you wish them to be the next best, highest version of themselves. All of spirituality is about letting go. this idea that if you can, what is it? A reason, a season, or a lifetime that people come into
Oh,
our lives.
stop.
I like that. I think that's,
I said barf. No,
I think people come into our lives for particular reasons. Like they show up when you need them, and some of them stay for longer than others. And, I know there are people out there that like to hold on to every relationship, not just romantic, but friendship and person that they've ever met, and keep in touch with them for their lives. But sometimes we fade out from people, and they come into our lives right at an important time when we need each other, and they fade out when when we've moved past it. You don't like
you're
that?
you're breaking my heart. You're breaking my, what do you call me? A hopeless romantic's heart. And I mean it even in friendship. And I used to be the opposite. I'd be like, whatever, I don't need to be friends with you. You upset me. Bye. But I'm not like that anymore. And I really don't I don't want to let go of things or people. I mean, I'm not a hoarder. In fact, I'm a minimalist, but I'm saying of people and experiences. Like I find those so valuable, because to me that connection is there forever. I'm about to go hang out with my ex, who I was with for 8 years, and her wife, and I think my life wouldn't be as good without them.
Okay.
It really has added so much to me. And it's like, I was texting with my sister yesterday, and I was texting about 2 of my exes, and she's like, tell that one hi, and like, oh, remember when, my son was so enamored with this one when we were in Hawaii, and, why do I want those things to go out of my life, And I texted both of them. They were very happy to hear all that stuff. So to me, my life is it's a story, and I don't want to lose the characters. Death does take people away from us, right? But that's the only way. I mean, if they're jerks to me, I give people 2 chances. And now that I'm over 50, the second chance, done. You're a jerk to me twice. Bye. That I won't tolerate. Like I can't tolerate disrespect or maltreatment anymore. But I don't want to lose those people I really loved ever. I'm like that person. I'm a person hoarder.
You're a person hoarder and a minimalist of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I philosophically, I agree with you that I like to hold on and keep connections with people. I'm the one who tends to reach out to people, or, before they reach out to me to say, hey, we haven't chatted in a while. And I try to keep connections alive, but I'm also one to believe that just because I knew you and I met you at one point doesn't mean that we have grown in the same way or grown in the same direction. And I've had people, particularly friends, who I had a lot in common with at the beginning of the friendship, and we've just grown over time and become really different, and to the point where we don't have a lot in common. And the only thing that we have in common was that we used to know each other. And so I'm okay with letting go and making space and making room for the people who show up for me today. And I'm not one to slough off friends right and left. I don't. I'm quite the opposite. Right. But I do think, particularly in relationships, that if I'm meant to stay connected with someone, then I will. I mean, I have my very first person that I had, I was in love with, my very first person. We lost touch for about 25 years, and then we reconnected about 1.5 years ago. And it's a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it, maybe we have successive seasons, but they were interrupted by some time apart that we needed in order to be where we are today. So I'm also okay with kind of turning it over to the universe for that.
Well, we're going to just have to be on opposite spectrums on that, or we'll be on the opposite sides of the spectrum. I'm so traumatized by that thought. Like I will get rid of people out of my life if they're jerks to me. That's for sure. But no, otherwise I keep them around. I like them. But yeah, that's just the truth.
I mean, I don't get rid of people. Sometimes things just fade, and I don't force them. I don't force them just because
but it's not about forcing. I mean, I wouldn't force something that was weird or uncomfortable, but I'm saying I'm so into Facebook, right? Like really into Facebook, because it keeps me connected to people. I mean, I've lived in Cambodia. I've traveled all over the world, and it's like, I've worked in these other countries. And if I didn't do that, how would I ever keep in touch with these people? How would I know what they're doing? You know what I mean? And for me, that's so important. And my law school friends, and, I would not be able to be in touch with those people. And I just, please don't ever say a season, a reason of whatever to me again, especially when it comes to dating. I can't handle that. That just, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
Yeah. So interesting.
You know?
We have different takes on it. Okay. Well, how about this one? This is another morning move on. Don't romanticize the relationship as if it was so perfect, or conversely, create more delusional feelings of hatred or victimization by indulging photos, songs, or anything else that unnecessarily provokes staying stuck in ill feelings. Ooh,
Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
right. What do you think?
I think it's wise, but I also think that, what does it mean to idealize someone? My friend might say, you're idealizing that person. Get over it. Obviously, it wasn't that good of a relationship if it broke up, but I might feel differently. And I also, as we've established, have very strong, love feelings for my friends and even my exes, and some, no, no.
So no, when you say no, you say it's okay to romanticize the relationship and remember the good things?
It's not romanticizing. I mean, yes, if this person was horrible to you, I mean, really horrible, beat you or did awful things. And then you're like, oh, but they're so great. That's one thing that's not good for you. But there obviously was a reason that you love that person. So if you get into a relationship, I assume you're in love with them or you love them. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, that's for me. I was talking to somebody about this last night who was suggesting some flings or one night stands kind of business. And I was like, no, not going to happen. I'm not that person. So I guess for me, it's all the people that I ended up having any kind of intimacy with, I ended up in a relationship with them, So I wouldn't casually get rid of those people.
Okay. And I keep hearing a theme with you is really at the onset, this idea that if I got into a relationship with them to begin with, I must have seen something that I liked, and then I grew to love them. So therefore, at the end, I have to remember and recall that I had those feelings for this person at one point in time, and it's okay to remember those.
Yeah. That's not idealizing. I mean, I think idealizing is something different, and that would be with a person who's maybe disturbed or whatever, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
I think if we're saying remembering the good times, remembering the good things, that's okay. At first, you have to block that stuff out. You can't even think of it because it's so painful. It just torments you, right? But after some time has passed, why can't you remember those good times? Why not?
I agree.
I
do. I think if all you're remembering though is the good times, then it's kind of like, why do we break up? And as someone who needs to, is more focused on now being more like one and done and not going back and having to romanticize, oh, this wasn't as bad as, and then I go back and be like, oh yes, our problems are still sitting here. I don't want to do that. So I want to be more realistic about the relationship, the good and the bad. I just want to remember the relationship for what it was and not focus overly on either end, because the other part of this comment was by also, creating more delusional feelings of hatred or victimization. Because on the contrary, then you remember only the bad things, and maybe that helps you in the immediate sense of getting over a breakup. But at the same time, then it may lead to starting to question, well, what kind of judgment do I have to even pick someone to begin with if this person was so horrible? Am I a really bad picker? And there's a whole lot of debates around whether you're a good picker or a bad picker, and people have a lot of comments on whether or not that's even a thing. But the reality is it does make you maybe self-doubt if you only remember the bad times too.
Well, I think that's where going to therapy really helps, because you need to have less black and white view. And I've had a black and white, for many, many decades of my life, I was very black and white. This is right. This is wrong. This person's good. This person's bad. And I don't want to ever do that again. I don't want to be that person,
Right, exactly. All right,
I don't think it's helpful.
Let me move on to the next kind of bucket of things here. I'm going to give you 3 themes that kind of all fall together, which is really around self kind of help or self, kindness. This first one is be kind to yourself. And 4 listeners said this. One said, be gentle with yourself. Every ending is like a death. Someone said, focus on self-care. Someone just said, be kind to yourself. And someone said, do be clear with boundaries for yourself. Like what is okay and not okay is determined by your own capacity or health. The next kind of sort of theme that goes along with that is take time, spend time to clear yourself Don't rush into another relationship. Show up as your best self. My only goal is to handle breakups with grace. Easier said than done, but that's my goal. So these are all around like kind of taking some time. There's also this idea of taking space. Don't try to be friends too soon. Don't think you'll remain friends immediately after the breakup. Take time to distance yourself. Stay away from ex's social media for a while. Even if we plan to stay friends, I don't need to see the idealized Instagram version of their life for a while, and don't get back together. So before we go into the take space one, because those are really about whether or not you should remain friends, let's look at some of the taking the time, the being kind to yourself, the self-care, showing up with grace. What have you done that's worked, that's kind of looking at your own self and being kind and gentle and, taking the space that you need?
I'd say like getting involved in pickleball, hiking. If I had a bathtub, I would take some baths. I go to the gym and I do my workout. Then I sit on the, Planet Fitness has those massage beds, the water hydro bed. That's like huge for me. Just 10 minutes, like before I go to work, to like give myself that treat, because I'm like, I've been through the ringer. I need some kind of treat, maybe massage, stuff like that. And just indulging my desire to have my friends be close to me and ask for help and all that. I mean, I've really found solace in this past year, just in the friendships, where I've literally asked for, I said, I need emotional support, and I've gotten it. And that's really deepened a lot of friendships and relationships with, my sisters even. And it's not easy. It's not easy to tell people that, but, it becomes necessary, and then it is self-care, to have the people close to you actually help you.
Right. Well, and I've done a lot what you've done too, and that's one of the suggestions in here about keeping busy and taking up new hobbies and things and reaching out to people. But as far as being kind to myself, physically keep doing, walking and eating well and all those things. But one of the biggest things that I had to do to be kind to myself was let go of my own self-judgment of how is it that I keep picking wrong? And I mentioned this just previously about being a good picker or a bad picker. How is it that I keep picking people that I'm not ending up with, right? Why am I not, what is the story of forever? And why do I keep picking people that are not my forever? And then having some kind of judgment about my own inability to make decisions that are in my best interest. And I've had to really learn to let that go. And that's been a lot of processing and a lot of therapy, because, my intention at the beginning when starting to be in a relationship with someone was that I was, sort of in it hopefully for, at least the long haul, or at least to get to know them. I mean, I don't think that it came from any place in which I was, unaware of what I wanted or needed, but that that I have to be okay with the fact that my relationships changed over time, and they didn't serve either or both of us in ways that we wanted to. And it was okay to wrap those up and move along. And that's not a testament to my failure or my inability to be an effective partner, but that I have to be kind to myself and not just continue to say, well, chalk it up as another failure, put it on the rejection list. And that to me was the biggest thing I could do to be kind to myself.
Well, this is great, because I think our whole season 3 is going to be about healing. So we can talk all about that stuff, because it's so important, right? That relationships that don't work out, it doesn't mean it's a failure. So I think we have to have a whole podcast on when people say I failed or this was a failure, I don't agree with that. That's why I keep people as friends, because I don't want that. It's not a failure. Everything's doesn't work out, doesn't mean it can't, transform into something else that's just as valuable.
Or that it wasn't valuable when you had it, right? Even if you're with someone for a year, I mean, that was a good use of time, or 6 years, or, people who have been, my parents were married for 17 years or something, and they had a good run, but by the end, they just had grown so far apart, and it was okay. It was not a failure. It was a success in some ways for them to have had such a beautiful relationship, and then to recognize when it didn't serve them well, and to move along. And they both repartnered and found wonderful people. And I went from 2 parents to 4 parents. And so, there are benefits to that. But let me ask you the question about this, because I think this is the part that's really interesting, is the taking space. Is as I mentioned before, not trying to be friends too soon, distancing yourself, getting off the social media, don't get back together right away, don't rush into another relationship, sort of making these kind of like taking some space to just, and you always tell me this, Corey, you just need to sit with yourself. I've tried to figure out like literally what that would look like, because I can't even sit with other people, let alone sit with myself. I get too antsy. But you say this all the time. You need to kind of sit with yourself, give yourself some breathing room before you go running back to someone, running forward to someone else, trying to be friends. What do you think? You still think people should sit with themselves?
Yes, I have sat with myself for the last year, and it's been torture for me. I mean, absolute torture. It's been so hard. It's the, opposite of how I would normally be, but I feel like in this situation, it warrants it. It's just me running and flailing and trying to have closure, trying to have, contact. It would just, it would lead to more pain for me. So again, it's about, am I growing as a person? Am I making better choices than before? And each relationship, each thing that happens to me, I feel like I want to be a better person through it. I mean, we've talked about this, not just breakups, it's death and all these other horrible things that happen to us. Does it have to ruin us? We have to act with decency. And I think that if you're doing space, we talked about this before, in a mean way, then that's not cool.
Right.
And I'm not even taking space. This is this forced exile, and I'm accepting it,
Yeah,
I'm
but you're
accepting
also,
it for what it is.
You're not filling the space with things that are unproductive. You're not running out into a relationship that you're not ready for. You're not trying to go back and try to get back together, or try to, enter into a friendship right away. You're taking a little bit of space. And I do agree with this. Our definitions of the duration of space might be different. Some people, might have a breakup and they're, single for a couple years. That isn't my thing. I'm the practical partner. I love being in partnerships and relationships, and I genuinely don't show up in them until I'm ready to. But I also do a lot of intention behind getting ready to. So some people just sit and linger, and, maybe it takes 2 years. For me, I'm got my breakup coach on speed dial and my handful of love crystals, and I'm like ready to kind of cleanse and move forward. So that space might look different for people. But I know one of the things you did talk about that you in using the space is, engaging in self-reflection and growth. And we had 3 listeners say something about this. We had one that said, self-reflect, learn from things you could have done differently. Someone said, do ask yourself and take responsibility for how you contributed to the problems in the relationship, because both people always contribute regardless. And the last one is, work on yourself to become a better human to attract the next partner. So what have you done?
Maybe not even to attract the next partner, just to have a good life,
to be a better person.
And I never said I wouldn't get back together with someone, because I would.
You're not using your space to actively try right now.
Exactly. I would like to.
Yeah.
I want to make that clear. Yes, I'm using that space because it was granted to me.
It was the gift of space that you didn't want.
Exactly.
Okay. Of all the things you've done, let's look at your most recent breakups. What have you done? What's the biggest learning lesson that you have gleaned about yourself that you would do differently going into a relationship moving forward?
I think just, through therapy, I realized about my attachment theory. I mean, my attachment issues. I was a disorganized attachment person, which is why I acted so crazy. I got to get out of this. I can't do this. I would never do that again.
Okay, good.
Very destabilizing.
And for me, I would say that I, finding the gentle balance between undercompensating and overcompensating for a relationship to try to make it work, right? Either not showing up when I should have, or showing up way too much when maybe it was not warranted, and finding the balance and showing up at the right kind of level for me, what's right for me, because those are under and overcompensated. Those were based on me and my perception. I thought I was doing that, not just the person I was with. So I think finding greater balance has been really helpful in the processing, in the reading of the books, and the listening to the podcasts and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. We have time for just a couple more here. I'm just going to, and we've talked a lot about this. So I'm just going to read these, but I want to move to the last one, but I want to honor our contributions, because this one was the most popular. Connect with friends and other loved ones. Hopefully you didn't make the mistake so many do, which is to ignore all their friends when they're in a relationship. So start getting into activities, give back to the community, do something to release yourself of wallowing for too long at a pity party. Someone else said, spend time with your friends. Another said, surround with healthy support system of friends and family. Another one said, do reach out for support from friends and family. Don't isolate for too long. You need people and interaction. Reach out to friends, or this person said, or reach out to nobody. Whatever feels good to you, do it. But the idea is that fostering and developing new connections was the most popular. We've talked so much about that. I want to just wrap up with the last two because they actually kind of, I don't know, do they go together or are they opposite? 3 listeners said indulge. Eat the cake and the fries, cut the hair and color it too. You have a week to go crazy and do everything you never did or couldn't, and then get some balance back. The second person said, excessively eat ice cream, LOL, moderation, of course. And the third one said, if the don't would be don't numb with substances or other vices. And then the opposing arguments were engage in healthy habits, which is find a healthy activity to occupy your mind with friends or alone, but maybe something different than things you do with the X. And the other person said exercise. So some people said eat the ice cream. Some people said exercise. What do you think? I know that you're a vegan, so imagine that it is your cashew ice cream that I would never touch with a 10-foot spoon. But
you know what? Why don't you try the oat ice cream? That's the
I'll
best.
try the oat
anyway.
One. Okay. Anyway, so what's the balance between indulging and, engaging in healthy habits?
Wow. Well, you can give yourself a week to watch 80s romance movies and cry your eyes out and then move on to healthy habits. I mean, none of my unhealthy habits are going to involve eating because I'm not going to ruin my progress and destroy myself over somebody else. But I will watch a lot of crap TV and feel sorry for myself and cry and go to bed at 6 p.m. and then get up at midnight. So I don't have to sit in the silence and quiet of, what used to be the greatest time of my life, that the evening time with my partner. So I do believe in indulging, but not in substances, not in food, not in things that are actually destructive to you, but literally in 1980s movies, Better Off Dead, and any John Cusack movie will always make me feel better. And St. Elmo's Fire will kill you. So I mean, I don't believe in indulging with food. What about you?
No, I didn't, with my breakups, I usually didn't indulge with food. I actually usually went kind of the other direction and did healthy habits. Although the one strange thing that I did was, is how some people change their look or whatever. Well, I went out and got my teeth whitened, which was stupid because they're back to the same color that they were before. So that didn't really help. But the other thing was I decided I wanted to be able to wear tank tops. And I made all these new friends that didn't know that I never wore tank tops because they just look weird on me. And so I decided I was going to be a tank top person. So I went out and bought a bunch of tank tops. And so I wore them, and I'm but then it was weeks, and I'm like, maybe I am a tank top person. This is the new me. So I was kind of indulging in this new tank top look, and it sort of made me feel a little bit empowered. Is it harmful? Is it destructive? No, not at all. I just put a different piece of clothing, and then I used it to go out and exercise, which I loved anyway. So that was my indulgence, was basically, wearing tank tops. So not too
good,
destructive, but
we're healthy indulgers.
Exactly. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up here. I'm going to wrap up with a quote from one of our listeners who had really just kind of a very simple, sweet, kind of to the point quote. And I'll wrap it up here. She said, "Don't get bitter, do get better."
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in for our final episode of Breakups. This was an extended session today, just so that we can make sure we cover all of our listeners' thoughts. So thank you again for tuning in. Stay alert and awake and ready to go, because season 3 will be out before you know it. And until then, go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.